I'm Eric Altieri. I'm the Communications Director and PAC Manager for National NORML out of Washington, D.C. I've been involved with the organization for about 6.5 years now, working primarily on lobbying and legislative efforts. And I'm also a citizen of Virginia, so I definitely have my own personal stake as a cannabis consumer in the Commonwealth of seeing these laws reformed and not making us criminals any longer. So when I began to ruminate on the topic of this panel, which is a vision for Virginia, I think it's important that we assess what our unique challenges are geographically and regionally, and the things that are both in and out of our control that can help us ameliorate them. So a lot of our struggles here in Virginia really have to do with the makeup of our legislative body and also some of the intricacies of the process. Here in Virginia, traditionally, we have a legislature that's rather resistant to change of any kind, not solely on this issue. They're slow to move on any of the big topics of the day. They like to drag their feet a lot, and if they can avoid taking really dramatic action, they tend to do that. Also, we're really plagued with an extremely short legislative session here. We barely get a solid 3 months of these guys being in Richmond, and it really not only impacts our ability to lobby and work with them pushing these issues forward, but it impacts their ability in terms of what they can really undertake in any given session. They really ultimately pass a very few number of bills every year, and it's about getting our issue to the top of that list and not seeing it, as we have in the past, tabled on really the first day of the session and kind of just brushed off to the side. And also, there's a strong streak of social conservatism in Virginia. We do have a Republican-dominated legislature here, and unlike in some other states where you do see a nice blend of social conservatives and libertarian-minded Republicans, overwhelmingly in Virginia we have social conservatism. Particularly the further you get from any of the urban areas out of when you get away from Northern Virginia and you get away from the Richmond metropolis. Anyone here who's coming out from Southwest Virginia in particular knows the struggle is real. So we have a lot of that working against us. Fortunately, there's some things that we can do and things that are happening as general trends that are going to help us out along the process. And firstly, that's really the purpling of Virginia. We're seeing the population really change in terms of its demographic makeup here. We're getting a lot more young people moving particularly to Northern Virginia for jobs in DC because it's more affordable. We're getting a lot more diverse groups moving in and actually finally representing really strong voting blocks that demand attention. And as that begins to progress, that helps us build a more diverse coalition with diverse voices to take to our legislative members. Another thing that's out of our hands, but could really spell some good things for our cause, is there's currently a case going on where they've deemed our congressional districts illegal because they've been gerrymandered in a way that creates extremely safe seats and excludes certain populations just to maintain the control of either party in that district. So with that ongoing, it looks like we may ultimately have to redraw our congressional districts, which more so applies to our federal legislators. But that gives us an ability where we will see a lot more competitive races in Virginia, which in turn, they will have to work harder for our votes, which really gives an opening for us to interject this issue as something that's going to sway voters in their direction. And we can build a bit of competition between candidates running against each other on what their stances are on this issue and whether or not that merits our support. In terms of how we really deal with this on our end, with the things we're facing, I think, honestly, the best strategy going forward is to focus on decriminalization. Decriminalization would immediately cover essentially everyone in the state, regardless of the reason of use. It avoids a lot of the problems we see with medical marijuana laws, especially as of late. There's been a very disturbing trend over the past 10 years. Ironically, as support goes higher and higher, these laws get more and more restrictive. We've seen it start with states like Rhode Island in the early part of the decade, where they began stripping out conditions, stripping out home cultivation, things we really believe are key to these laws. And even just as recently in New York and Minnesota, we've seen smoking of whole plant marijuana removed. We've seen really crucial conditions that qualify being removed. A bill that just passed the state Senate in Pennsylvania this year even removed AIDS as a qualifying condition. I don't know why, and they what they ended up passing there is, I think, a big learning experience for us, because Pennsylvania and Virginia actually share a lot of commonalities in our political makeup in terms of having few centralized, liberal-leaning urban areas and large swaths of conservative areas. And what we ended up there is really, it can't even be called a medical marijuana bill. It's a limited marijuana products bill. And these are the kind of things we're going to have to grapple with in Virginia, and we're even more struggling in terms of explaining this very complicated system in a very short session. And we do have to educate our lawmakers a lot more. They're a bit ignorant to what all these details mean. So while immediately medical would seem appealing on its face due to the broad support and it seems like a no-brainer, when it comes to the details of the program, quite personally, I'm terrified of a medical system that Virginia will create. It'll be extremely limited. And we get, with decrim, our arguments are much more very concise. And if anything, we have a lot more support for this. Most polls show that over 90% of Americans don't think someone should go to jail for marijuana. The public's mind's largely made up on that. And so to push that forward, we really need to up our lobbying efforts. We need everyone here to set up personal face-to-face meetings with their state senators and their delegates. Multiple meetings. They need to know your name when they walk in the building. You guys need to be on a first-name basis. And you need to be in their faces, and you need to together organize other constituents, because it's really the key is that they're constituents. They know who hires and fires them every several years. And if they see that coming from their own district, that has much more impact than if they're just hearing from a broad swath of people who don't necessarily have a say in their elections. And as we've discussed in a lot of these panels earlier this morning, we need to build strong coalitions, strong diverse coalitions. That's why it's fantastic to see groups represented today, such as Fairfax NAACP, who's a great group to have on our side, and they're going to be extremely valuable in this discussion that's going to be going on for the next several years in Virginia. And we need to begin to strongly engage as individuals in the electoral process. You need to be able to, when we have candidates who support us, you need to volunteer. You need to phone bank, you need to help raise money, you need to show up at their events, you need to make them feel loved. And we're beginning to see that pay out, in particular this year with our decriminalization bill that's being introduced by Senator Adam Ebbin. That's largely a product of the strong support he saw from the National NORML PAC as well as Virginia NORML for his election when he tried to run for Congress. We raised a lot of money for him. He got a lot of support when he polled his base. They knew that a lot of his support was coming because of this issue. And now we are in a great position with him we've drafted a very excellent decriminalization bill that includes possession of up to an ounce and cultivation of up to 6 plants. So that will be our bill for this year, and as long as we meet these challenges and we devise good strategies and strong coalitions, within the next several years, I fully believe we will stop arresting marijuana users in Virginia. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Victoria.
Director from the Alliance for Progressive Values, and just to let you know, the Alliance for Progressive Values is a multi-focused organization. So we focus on LGBTQ, the environment, education, women's rights. So we have a lot of areas that we look at, and one is cannabis reform. For us, the reason why it's so important to reform it, well, across the country, but particularly in the state of Virginia, is that the laws just don't work. The policy doesn't work. As the previous speakers have already said, it's truly arcane and punitive, and it ends up harming our culture in the long run. When people can't get jobs and can't afford to pay bills, we all suffer. And so for us, what we would really like to see in the state of Virginia and across the country is complete legalization. That's what we want. For us as an organization, we find that it's extremely important to build coalitions with everyone. So even organizations that we would think on their face don't look like somebody that would be interested, we reach out and start talking to them. And what we found is quite often they're very receptive and end up becoming an ally and helping. And so that's what I really hope we're able to do with cannabis reform here. The other thing that we're seeing as an organization is that the public at large, there needs to be a lot of education. A lot of people in the state of Virginia that we're talking to are afraid. They have bought into the myths of marijuana, particularly with regards to children, and that's what they see. Marijuana is bad. If my kid smokes it, the next thing they're going to be doing is shooting heroin, and I don't want that. So there needs to be a lot of public education. The other thing that we're finding is there's a lot of people that are actually pro-marijuana, or at least medical marijuana, and they're afraid to come out and talk about it. So we need to have an environment, or cultivate an environment where people aren't afraid. Because as you know, when people are afraid, they don't want to get involved. And you need everybody to help, to lobby, to make the legislative changes that are necessary. As Eric previously said, and as I'm sure you all are very much aware, the state of Virginia legislatively is extremely conservative. The Republicans now have control of both the House and the Senate. Looking at the 2015 General Assembly, for our organization progressively, we know it's going to be a rough ride. But we also know that the only way to change things is to constantly go for it. Because each time, even if it's just a little teeny bitty chip off of that stone, that's one little teeny move forward. So I see the reform of marijuana in Virginia happening, but it's going to take all of us together to do it, and it's going to take consistent effort for everybody to go to their legislators, to make the appearances, to educate the public, everybody that you can talk to, and to really think about who it is you're talking to, because the way you talk to a legislator is going to be very different than how you talk to your 5-year-old's parent that they go to school with. So it's important to really understand who are you dealing with, to put the language in place so that you can make that connection with them and have them be comfortable to start communicating about it. And so that's really all I have. I really appreciate being here, and I say, let's go for it and make it happen.
Vivian, you're on.
Hello, my name is Vivian Perea. I am president of Students for a Sensible Drug Policy for Northern Virginia Community College. For those of you who are not familiar with Students for Sensible Drug Policy, we are actually a social activist group. It's an international organization, so we have chapters in Virginia, but we also have chapters in England. We have chapters in the UK. It's a great organization to be involved with. Currently, we have chapters at Mason, Virginia Tech has a really good one, Northern Virginia Community College Woodbridge campus. We have 6 colleges altogether for NOVA. We're the only one that has a chapter, and so we're trying to develop other chapters in the community colleges, because reaching out to the community colleges is a step in the right direction. Forgive me if I sound a little nervous, guys. First time I've ever done this panel thing, so thank you. I got enough time, right?
Yes.
What does reforming cannabis laws mean to me? It means the world to me. Currently, if you are a student and you get a marijuana charge, you are no longer eligible for financial aid. And that just in itself motivates me to educate people on getting these laws passed. Unfortunately, if you were to commit a more violent act like robbery or rape, you're still eligible for financial aid. So that in itself doesn't make any sense. And we can't continue to put kids who are very smart. Working with SSDP, I've learned that a lot of people who smoke marijuana are very smart, they're very educated, and we're very motivated, but we have to hide, and we have to live in this world where we are defined as being lazy or stupid, and we're not. We're very educated, smart people. And so it means a lot to me to see the reform happen, especially here in Virginia, which I've been a resident of Virginia since I was 7 years old, and I love this state. My home state is Colorado, so I'm very proud of Colorado right now, as I'm sure a lot of people are. SSDP has been really working on getting other states to pass laws. So we do a lot of phone banking. Currently, we're working on calling people in DC, in Oregon, and everywhere else that right now on November 7th, people are going to be voting on. So we have to get out and we have to do those things. And so we encourage anybody, if you have the opportunity to volunteer time, if you don't want to speak to your legislative people, but you're willing to make phone calls, get involved, reach out to your community. Let's see.
You got about 3 minutes.
About 3 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm doing good then.
Yeah.
One of the things I do want to bring to want people to know about is we had something last year called the Good Samaritan policy. If you guys aren't familiar with that, right now, if somebody overdoses or if you're with somebody who has an overdose, you basically will be charged if you call the police and ask for help. And so that's a policy that we tried to push through last year, and unfortunately, it didn't get through. So I work with Georgia chapters, and I work with a lot of the other chapters that have been able to push this policy through. So we're working to try to do that. And my hopes and dreams for Virginia is that we get better educated and help educate other people, because at this point in time, the ramifications for, to me, I think the worst thing about marijuana is the legal ramifications. That's the worst thing about weed, and people need to understand that it's helpful, it's a benefit, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. Jason.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jason Amatucci, and I founded the Virginia Industrial Hemp Coalition a few years ago. Thank you, Jeremy and Virginia NORML, for inviting us to be a part of this. I think it's really great that we are coming together and uniting on this important topic, one of the most important issues, I think, of our time. My background, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I own the Virginia Boxwood Company with my father. It's a family business. What we do is we take care of all the boxwood around the state. It's a beautiful evergreen shrub, and we clip it, and I sell the floor greenery all across the country. And that kind of transitions me into the hemp industry, I think, very well, because basically we'll be growing and we'll be shipping things all across the country, hopefully one day here in Virginia. I'm very proud of the Virginia Industrial Hemp Coalition. Me and my regional coordinators, we worked on Bill 1277, and we actually had the pen, so to say. And what we did was, we worked on that bill, we went back and forth with Delegate Joseph Yost down in the Blacksburg area, and we got a really good bill that's going to be coming up in 2015, I was talking about it earlier, and we actually have a chance to grow hemp in Virginia next year. And I think that this, change comes in steps, right? So the first step for Virginia, of course, is I'd love to see a medical marijuana bill out there, but we have a really good shot of getting hemp, cannabis, sativa in the ground next year. So I really think that hemp is kind of this uniting force, because we've got Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, and the Green Party all coming together on this issue. I don't think there's many issues out there that all these people can come together. I mean, even the medical and the recreational has its kind of partisanship, But with this, we're seeing Republicans coming across the board. I think hemp is something that can be a template for the future of politics, because we know that this bipartisanship and this at each other's throats is not getting anything done, and the citizens lose out in this battle. And they're kind of, I saw a picture of like the Democrats and the Republicans, the donkey and the elephant ripping a flag apart. And it makes a lot of sense, because that's what's happening. And we've got to start with the hemp issue, I think, is right there in the forefront. We've got farmers, we've got the food freedom movement, we've got the Chamber of Commerce and the business leaders that want this. We've got the recreational and medical marijuana people that want this. The environmental movement and the liberty movement are coming together, So this is talk about uniting and talk about building coalitions. I think hemp is really where it's at, and we really need to focus our attention on that. I'd like to also say that, the biggest goal for us with hemp is education. We've got to educate the people. I take for granted my knowledge about hemp, and so do some of our people in this room, kind of preach to the choir about this kind of stuff. But when you go out to the public, they don't even realize that hemp's different. Or they say, well, it's the male plant, or it's this and that. It's unbelievable the lack of knowledge out there, or that they think that you can, that you can smoke it and get high, and that's the first thing we have to differ, to make the difference on. And I've evolved on this. When I first started the coalition, I was very, very serious about keeping everything separate. I mean, I was like on the deep end of it. I was like, the only thing that the detractors can have is to say that we're going to try to get this hemp legalized because we want marijuana. So I said, guys, we've got to make a strict line. We cannot associate. We can't have an event with NORML. I was very serious about it. I've totally evolved on that. I mean, I'm sitting right here, of course, and it's great because we need to come together. And the cannabis plant needs to be freed. They say free the seed. We need to free it completely, and that's where I come from. Whatever steps that we get there, decriminalization, hemp, medical, whatever steps we need to take, let's do it. But we all need to come together on this. I do say that we can look at whatever you want to think about the gun lobby, whether one side issue or the other. We can look at them as an example of effective lobbying strategies, because if you look at them, they get a lot of things done, and you know why? Because they give politicians what I like to call political pain. And we got to start stepping up and be a little more aggressive, because we have a lot of people voting for guys that won't even touch this issue, and we got to start giving them political pain. We got to say, you got to listen to us and do things for us, or we're going to withhold our vote. And we need to let them know that. And like everyone was saying, we need to go there, so they should know you on a first name basis. Let them see and hear you, and then say, you know what? If you don't vote for marijuana things, or we're going to be watching you, and I'm going to take my vote back from you. Let them realize, like you were saying, hire and fire. They got to know who's the boss, and it's the people. Let's see. That goes along with the free passes that we're giving a lot of these politicians. We're just kind of voting them in there, and we're not expecting much from them. So to close up, I think my time's coming to an end here. I got, what, 2 minutes?
Yeah.
2 minutes, okay. That we really need to be more aggressive. We really need to, of course, get unified. And we got to push that status quo. We've got to change this, because we are on the right side here. We have the facts. We have history. We have everything on our side. And really, there's not much stopping us but ignorance. And as long as we can break through that and get through to people, I see light bulbs going off on people's heads all the time. About hemp, about cannabis. The medical marijuana stories are huge. When you see the child being cured of something, I mean, that puts off light bulbs in so many people's heads. We've got to really push on those things. Also, just be careful on who you vote for. Make sure that they're paying attention to you, because when you vote for someone that ignores your cause, you're sending them a message that they can keep ignoring your cause. So I'll close out with this quote by Carl Sagan that I really like. It's one of my favorite quotes. The illegality of cannabis is outrageous, an impediment to the full utilization of a drug which helps produce a serenity and insight, sensitivity and fellowship so desperately needed in this increasingly mad and dangerous world. And that was from Carl Sagan. So.
All right, Miss Shirley, take it home.
Okay, good afternoon again. I'm Shirley Jenwright. I am the president of the Fairfax County NAACP. This is my second term. I've just gotten re-elected unopposed, so that means I must be doing something right. I became involved with NORML 1 year ago when I was a speaker at their first conference in Charlottesville. And one of the things that Jeremy told me was that of all the invitations he sent to the NAACP, I was the only one that responded. And I am so glad that I did, because attending that conference taught me a lot. I didn't know nearly as much about cannabis. I didn't even know the name was cannabis. I just knew marijuana, pot, and weed. So if you would have called in and asked me about cannabis, I wouldn't have had a clue what you were talking about. But one of the words that I have heard from the panel is educate. Everyone has talked about education. And that is what I am seeing. So many people don't have a clue. They have heard when they came back from Vietnam, everybody was smoking pot, getting high, and doing what they wanted to do. But they don't understand the medical use of marijuana or cannabis. They do not understand the impact that it has had on the lives of our children. The NAACP is a civil rights organization, and we fight discrimination and we fight civil rights. As the president, one of the reasons why I am pushing so much for a decriminalization bill is because of the disparate proportion of minorities that are being arrested with marijuana compared to others. But not only that, is that the mere fact that these kids will make a mistake, they are given a drug charge, and they aren't able to qualify for any assistance from the federal government. You know, so basically what you have done is ruined their life. If they had to go to school on a Pell Grant, that is no longer available to them. And most of these kids are from economically challenged communities. So now what do? They go out and get in trouble because they can't get a job. So now they're back in jail again. One of the things that I've also noticed is that once the government started to, the prison system became privately operated. It is now a big business. So you only make business if all of your beds are filled. So it's a revolving door. I think what we have to do again with the education, we have to educate people. Our churches are not involved in the minority community. That's where we find so many people on a Sunday, is in their church. So what I have been doing is trying to individually speak with some of the ministers to talk about the issue of marijuana and get their understanding. Now, I'll share a story with you. One of the pastors that I spoke with is the pastor of one of the largest churches in Northern Virginia. And I assumed that we would have a good 10 or 15 minute conversation. It turned out the conversation was probably less than 5 minutes. I told him what I wanted to talk to him about. And I'm assuming with him being a minority minister, he would be empathetic and say, oh yeah, we need to work on this. His response to me was, the Senate and Congress are mostly Republicans and they don't give a damn about you black folks. This was from a minister. He did not say that I'm going to help you or anything. I walked out and said, you could be a Republican. You could be a white Republican. You could be an old Republican. You know, because he wasn't going to help. But I still have the challenge, going back with the NAACP. Our state NAACP is not active in our fight for a decriminalization bill or any bill dealing with marijuana. We had a conference last week in Chesapeake. I spoke with our president and talked to her about what I'm doing with NORML and what we should be doing. And her comment to that was, write a resolution. I said, I don't need a resolution. I said, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going out and I'm going to say I'm representing the NAACP. I said, so y'all can take me out of office if you want to. I don't care. I said, but we have a problem and I'm part of a solution. So this is what I'm going to do. So I have been communicating with our national office, with our criminal justice department. They are well aware of what I'm doing. They are applauding what I am doing. I have a letter already prepared to go to the other NAACP presidents, and I will personally, if I need to, go to them throughout Virginia to educate them so they can become advocates for a decriminalization bill, for a medical marijuana bill, and later on legalization of marijuana. But we have to get everybody involved, but if we don't get them educated, we can forget it. It is also common that we have to get before our legislators and say, look, if you don't support this, we won't vote for you. My stand on that is we need to start building future leaders that represent what we want and get the younger kids involved, get them elected. We have in Stafford, Virginia, young delegate, a young congressman rather, and I think he's 32, and he beat everybody the first time he ran. And one of the things he said, he walks through the neighborhood very fired up. And he was at our banquet, has spoken to some of the kids, and I think he would be an excellent advocate, and I am going to be meeting with him. So I wrote, let me see what I wrote down. One of my hopes and dreams is to get a decrim bill passed, to get a medical marijuana bill passed, and get legalization passed. That way we get the drugs out of the hands of the drug dealers. Tax them, to use the money to educate the kids, you know, because we do have a problem in education. I like to see cannabis removed as a Schedule I drug. That's something that our congressmen can do on Capitol Hill and our senators. And I will also, once we get a decrim bill passed, look at removing from the record of those who have been previously charged, remove that from their records so they can have a successful life to support themselves and their families. So I thank you very much for listening. It is a great opportunity to be here with you again, and I look forward to being with you next year.